Welcome back, everybody, and thank you so much for joining me today because we need to have a little chat here about nostalgia. Now, look, I get it. It is really easy to look back on things that we really enjoyed when we were younger with rose-tinted glasses and really romanticize things we thought were cool, but let's be honest here, a lot of stuff did not age well. It can be really jarring or even upsetting as an adult to go back and try to relive some of these positive childhood memories just to realize the quality isn't nearly as good as you originally thought it was. Now, if you're somebody that falls into this category, don't feel too bad because I'm right there with you, and in fact, it's the whole reason I even wanted to make this video in the first place. You see, I was never one of those kids that actually picked up and read books very often. Like, I certainly never have read the entire Harry Potter or Lord of the Rings series like a lot of my classmates did growing up. But what I did do is I frequented a little website you might know as CreepyPasta. I was afraid of essentially everything growing up, so this horror website was the perfect place to scare the absolute bejesus out of little me, especially when I didn't know if the stories being told were true or not. And this is particularly the case for tales such as 1999 and Candle Cove, which are still fond memories for me to this day. However, it was during the peak of my creepypasta consumption that a certain story appeared, one that became well known across the entire internet horror genre, a pale-faced monster which made you afraid to turn off the lights at night. And no, I'm not even talking about Slenderman, if you can believe it. I'm talking about the psycho himself, Jeff the Killer. I personally remember reading this story for the first time and seeing the now infamous photo attached to it and thinking that this was one of the scariest things that I had ever read before. And that image stuck in my mind for a lot longer than I really care to mention. Now, if you're like me, you read this story for the first time when it dropped in 2011 in written format, drinking a Capri Sun and eating a cosmic brownie at 2 a.m. at a friend's house. But I can assure you, as much as you may have been afraid to go around a corner to see a set of eyes staring back at you after consuming this content, I can confirm that this is a horribly written story by modern day standards. Now, I'm not the first person to give a negative criticism to this absolute classic of a creepypasta, but it's for very good reason. I mean, this story is laughably bad at best and an incel fantasy at worst. As I finished reading Jeff the Killer again for the first time in many years, I was shocked to find just how little this actually works as a horror and plays out far more like a bad 80s action movie with all of the over-the-top violence and ridiculous one-liners that are dropped by the characters. I walked away from this experience mostly just being disgusted with myself for ever being afraid of it, and I think a lot of that's going to get chalked up to just the scary photo of Jeff that went along with the document. It was in this disappointment that an idea jumped to the front of my mind, a ridiculous notion that absolutely nobody asked for. Could I rewrite Jeff the Killer and actually make it an enjoyable story? I mean, probably not, but I did it anyway. Before I began writing, I did set up a couple metrics for myself to ensure that this story would remain Jeff the Killer and not just have bits and pieces of that original story tossed in with a whole different tale being told. Firstly, the sequence of events had to be very similar to the original story, and anything that was added or subtracted was done simply to provide additional detail that was needed to the story or remove things that just never made sense in the first place. Secondly, the addition of names and locations only occurred if they were never provided in the original story, such as Jeff's surname and his parents' first names. With the rules out of the way, let's jump into the rewrite here, and I hope you all enjoy. A quiet hum emanates from an aging Panasonic, illuminating the otherwise dark living room as it struggles to life. The appliances flip to channel 3, the green number appearing in the top left corner of the screen as the familiar visage of local reporter Tiffany White comes into focus. The woman stands in front of a single-story home in a high-end suburban neighborhood, the microphone almost pressed to her lips as her rhythmic voice crackles through the speakers. Terror continues to plague the residents of Louisa County as yet another home was invaded last night. WLLP has the exclusive interview with the victim, who barely escaped to tell his tale. The screen cuts to an 11-year-old boy, his voice trembling as he struggles to speak. I woke up last night to use the bathroom, but when I came back to my room, I saw my window was open, which was weird because it was so cold outside. I went to close it as I saw eyes staring at me from my closet. I screamed as the stranger tackled me to the ground, putting their hand over my mouth before saying, "Go to sleep." That's when I saw his face wasn't normal. His eyes looked like they were glued open. His mouth was just a little too wide, and he had no nose, which was really scary. I remember thinking this must be the boogeyman. I saw a knife in his hand and tried to get away, but he was too strong. That's when my dad came into my room and pulled him off me, but the stranger already cut my neck a little. The camera zooms in on the medical patch taped to the boy's throat as he continues his story. He stabbed my dad in the shoulder and pushed me away from him before jumping out of the window and running away. I could hear my mom calling the police from the other room, and I ran over and hugged my dad. I thought he was going to die. The program cuts back to Tiffany. This instance marks the 5th assault in the last 2 weeks. The culprit is still at large, and residents are advised to keep all windows and doors locked until further notice. If you have any information regarding the identity of the offender, please reach out to the police tip hotline at... The TV is clicked off as a young boy returns to one of many bunk beds lining the walls of the room. He pulls the covers over his shoulders, a sober coldness strewn across his face. We should have never moved here. I miss my home. I miss my friends. I miss my parents. But most of all, I miss you, Jeff. A box cutter slides shut as the last of the cardboard moving boxes is broken down and placed into a green recycling bin on the sidewalk. The pounding of a hammer echoes through the gated community, a sign labeled The Martins, established 2008, now hanging proudly from the newly built 2-story house's front door. As the large box truck labeled Better Movers Co. departed the building, the new owner smiled and waved to the workers, happy that the transition to her family's new home was now complete. As is common with new arrivals in confined communities, it didn't take long before a neighbor came knocking, casserole in hand. I hope I didn't catch you at a bad time. My name's Barbara, and I just wanted to welcome you all to the neighborhood. Barbara extends the pleasant-smelling dish forward to the mother, who gladly takes it. You're too kind. I'm Susan, and the boys are around here somewhere. It's pretty hard to keep track of them. Barbara chuckles. Oh, I know all about it. I have a son, too. Billy's actually turning 12 on Sunday. If you wanted to bring the family over, it'd be a great chance for you all to meet everyone. A smile stretches across Susan's face. That would be lovely! Jeff and Lou have had a bit of a hard time with the transition, so it'd be nice for them to make some friends. Barbara leans in closer, placing her hand on the corner of her mouth. Plus, my husband makes a mean white Russian, so it makes dealing with the kids a little easier. Susan laughs. You could definitely count us in then. Thanks for the casserole, and I look forward to Billy's birthday. The women wave goodbye, Susan placing the meal on the dining room table. Jeff, Lou, dinner's ready! The lazy, rhythmic pattern of unenthused footsteps approach the kitchen as the 2 teenage boys come into view. The slightly older Jeff sits first, his light brown hair falling shoulder length and partially covering his eyes, causing him to flip it backward to fully see his plates. Lou takes a seat next to him, his short blonde waves closely resembling his mother's. Both of them have a relatively athletic build, their muscles toned from being 3-season athletes since elementary school. Susan places 2 heaping spoonfuls of the casserole in front of the boys, who turn up their noses at it. Lou speaks up. Oh, Mom, what is this mush? Susan, attesting his attitude to the move, calmly replies. One of our new neighbors came by earlier and gave it to us as a gift. I'm sure it's tasty. Just try a bite and I'm positive you'll like it. Jeff's stomach growls, prompting him to dig in. He swallows the first bite and gives a thumbs up to Lou, who follows suit. After a minute of silent chewing, Susan pipes up again. Actually, we were all invited to her son's 12th birthday party on Sunday, so don't make any plans, okay? Jeff speaks through mouthfuls of food. I'm not going to some kid's birthday party. I'm 13 now and have better things to do with my time. Susan's calm facade begins to crack with the comment. We're going to the party and that's the end of it. Jeff slams his fork down before pushing himself away from the table and throwing his hands in the air. Fine! He storms off, climbing the staircase to his room, slamming the door shut behind him. Lou exchanges a concerned glance with his mother as he slowly follows Jeff. Lou opens the door to find his brother sat cross-legged, sulking on the carpeted floor. I hate it here. Lou sits on his brother's bed, nodding in agreement. Jeff continues. We had it so good before. I know Dad got a promotion and wanted a better house for us, but he's not even here to enjoy it. He's always away on business trips for months at a time, so he shouldn't even have a say. Lou sighs before speaking. At least we still have each other, and who knows, maybe there are some cute girls here. A grin forces its way onto Jeff's face as he jumps up and puts Lou into a headlock, giving him a brutal noogie. The brothers' laughter is heard throughout the house and into the kitchen. Susan grows a wide smile as she washes the dishes. Paul, I can't wait for you to come and see our new home. The warm September sun was peering over the horizon as Jeff and Lou made their way to the bus stop at the entrance gate. Lou began talking about how excited he was to see The Dark Knight, but it fell on deaf ears. Jeff was caught up in a dream he had the night before, a monstrous, violent scene where he was the thing in the darkness. The memory, which should have brought disgust and horror, didn't. Lou grabbed his brother's arm, shaking it lightly. Hey, Space Cadet, you there, bro? Jeff shook his head, turning his attention to Lou. Yeah, sorry about that. Man, I hope today is just a bunch of bullshit introductions and syllabus crap. Lou shrugs. I mean, that's usually how the first day of school goes, so props. As the two waited for the bus, they watched three other boys approach, all appearing to be around the same age as Lou. They dressed in similarly colored polos, khakis, and dress shoes, and walked in a formation that prevented anyone from passing them on the sidewalk. Lou comments, jabbing playfully into Jeff's ribs. The one in the center looks normal, but he's got the meatball and the string bean behind him. The brothers chuckle quietly as the trio waits next to them. The average-looking boy eyes Lou and Jeff up and down before speaking. You guys new in town? I've never seen you before. The boy reaches out to shake Jeff's hand, who cocks an eyebrow at the gesture. Yeah, I'm Jeff, and this is my brother, Lou. He reaches out to take the boy's hand, but he pulls it back before Jeff can grab it, yelling, Psych! The trio of boys laugh dramatically, Lou and Jeff rolling their eyes in response. I'm Randy. The thin guy's Keith, and the big fella's Troy. If you guys are new around here, then you probably don't have many friends, right? The brothers averted their attention from Randy, who continued his speech. Say, why don't we become friends? That sounds good, doesn't it, guys? Keith and Troy nod in agreement, getting closer to the brothers. Randy stands in front of Lou, a toothy smile on his face. Well, that settles it. And, you know, as friends, it would be nice to help each other out when we need it, right? Troy speaks up. Aw, man, I forgot my lunch money. It would be really nice for our new friends to give me theirs to replace it. Jeff barks back at the trio. Back off! We don't want to be your friends and we're not giving you anything. At once, Troy and Keith grab Jeff, wrestling him to the ground, trying to grab for the money in his pocket. Randy and Lou locked arms, awkwardly twirling in an attempt to be stronger than the other. It was at this moment Randy lost his balance, accidentally stepping off the curb and into a braking car. A sickening crack broke through the noise of the morning commute, followed by the ear-piercing scream of Randy. The boys' melee ceased, all of them reeling from the twisted, bloody sight. Except Jeff. Sirens blaring, the ambulance departed the gruesome sight, Randy's status left unknown. All four of the boys' parents arrived as the police began questioning. Who can tell me what happened here? How did Randy fall into the street? Keith jammed an accusatory finger towards Jeff and Lou. It was them! They were trying to take our lunch money and attacked us when we said no! Troy jumped in to demonize the brothers further. Yeah, and that's when Lou pushed Randy in front of that car. Jeff yells out in objection. That's a lie! They were the ones trying to take our money and they attacked us first! The officer closes his notebook. We are not here to discuss who took whose money. All I need to know is if this was a self-inflicted accident or if someone made him fall into the street. So, I can either take everyone to the station for further questioning or someone can confess. Susan jumps to defense. My boys have never done anything violent in their lives. They wouldn't. Lou cuts off his mother. I did it. Jeff was just trying to defend himself, but I pushed Randy. He won't get in trouble now, right? The officer nodded and opened the back door to the police cruiser, ushering Lou inside. Tears flowed out of Susan's eyes, shocked in disbelief. As Troy and Keith left with their families, the boys angrily spat in Jeff's direction, gritting their teeth as they drove away. A newfound coldness washed over Jeff, infiltrating the boy like a cancer. Upon arriving home, the immediate shock of the day's events began to wear off, leaving behind feelings of resentment and frustration in the young man. As Susan closed the front door, Jeff lashed out at his mother with vicious intensity. Why didn't you stand up for him? You're our mother! You're supposed to protect us! Susan turned her eyes to the ground, unable to look her son in the face. Jeff swung irrationally at the wall, his knuckles splitting open as they broke through the drywall. His mother let out a quick gasp as the angry young man marched upstairs. Susan reached for the cordless telephone and dialed a number from memory with a trembling finger. After 4 rings, a man on the other end answered. "Hey honey, I'm in the middle of a sales pitch. Everything all right?" Jeff did not attend school the entire first week, choosing instead to isolate himself in his bedroom. Trying to give her son time to process, Susan would leave breakfast and dinner in the hallway, collecting the dishes when they inevitably appeared empty an hour or 2 later. She tried to talk to him with every meal delivery, but was consistently met with a quiet, "Go away," and eventually, even the rejection ceased. This was enough to break Susan's patience. It was Sunday morning when she placed a tray of bacon and chocolate chip pancakes on the ground, routinely knocking. "Jeff, it's breakfast time. I made your favorite. Can I bring it to you?" Silence. Susan knocked again, her voice wavering slightly. "I haven't seen you in a few days, and it's a beautiful fall day outside. Why don't you get dressed and we can go have some fun, okay?" Again, no reply. The knocks became progressively louder. "I have given you your space to handle Lou's situation, but it's been hard on me too. Your father will be home soon, and I know we'd both love to see you smile. Can you please come out? I miss you." The lock unlatches, the putrid smell of puberty infiltrating her nostrils. The bedroom was hardly visible, the only illumination coming from the slits in the window shades. Jeff stood zombified, a black sweatshirt covering his hunched frame. Dark circles clung to the young man's eyes as Susan forced a smile through an upturned nose. "There you are! I was starting to forget what you looked like. Why don't you have breakfast and get yourself cleaned up? I have something fun planned for us today." Jeff glances upwards, a natural scowl worn. "Not today." Jeff began to close the door before his mother grabbed his wrist, her demeanor breaking to a rarely seen ferocity. "You're coming out of that room. I have had to deal with loose shit all by myself and I am sick of it. You will get in that shower and put on some decent clothes, and then we are going to Billy's birthday party together. Am I clear?" Susan released her son, returning to her own bedroom to change into party attire. It had been a while since Jeff heard his mother use that tone with someone. The last instance was with his father, shortly after he informed her that he was to leave on a 2-month business trip to Japan 2 weeks before they moved. Grumpily, Jeff sprayed himself with the overpowering aroma of spray-on deodorant and threw on a mismatched set of clothes that were laden across the floor. As he stepped into the hallway, his mother was on him like a hawk. "That shirt has a mustard stain on it. Can you please find something clean at least?" Jeff sighed and rolled his eyes at the request, before eventually complying. By the time he was appropriately dressed and finally got to taste his breakfast, it had gone cold. The young man ate anyway, not wanting his mother's temper to worsen. Another 5 minutes passed before Susan appeared, seemingly overdressed for a child's party. Jeff shot a judgmental eyebrow at his mother as the two exited their home. As Susan was locking the front door, she spoke to her son. "I know this doesn't seem like fun, Jeff, but it might be good for you to meet some of the other kids in the neighborhood. You already missed the first week of school, and it's going to be harder to make friends if you don't put forth some effort." Jeff's teeth gritted behind curled lips at the comment, but instead of launching a biting comeback about her own lack of friends, he continued walking in silence all the way to the party. The wooden gate that led to the backyard was ajar, allowing the mother and son entrance. Children's squeals of enjoyment were heard long before well over a dozen kids were seen jumping in a bounce house. Susan pointed to the inflatable, trying to spur some positivity in her son. "Sounds like they're having a good time. Why don't you join in?" Jeff sneered at the thought. "You're kidding, right?" Susan gave her son a playful yet firm shove in the direction of the other kids as she entered the kitchen to mingle with the other adults. Jeff sat alone at a picnic table lined with paper cups with varying levels of a nearly transparent red liquid. He supported his cheek on his right fist, staring blankly through the pane glass window where the parents were mingling. He saw his mother speaking to Barbara in what appeared to be an unwanted conversation. Even from this distance, he could see their neighbor uncomfortably looking away and sipping her drink, trying to end the chat without seeming rude. Unwilling to play with his peers and desperate to stave off his boredom, Jeff entered the house. Oddly, the indiscernible rumble of mature voices was somehow louder than the screaming children. The smell of alcohol in the air felt more appropriate for a dive bar and not a kid's birthday party. Jeff considered taking a sip of his first adult beverage from an abandoned plastic cup still half full with the milky liquid, but quickly shed the thought. Instead, he managed to avoid his mother's gaze and enter Billy's bedroom unnoticed. The space was decorated with an ungodly amount of superhero iconography, including a knockoff Spider-Man body pillow, which made Jeff laugh hard enough for tears to well up. Through the hysterics, the sound of the bedroom door closing and locking behind him snapped the young man back to reality. He fully anticipated this to be his mother, come to scorn him for snooping. As he turned around, an unexpected shove threw him off balance, the stumble causing him to trip over a Lego castle, sending the pieces scattering across the carpet. His head bounced off the floor as a crushing weight pushed down on his chest, restricting his movement and breathing. As Jeff regained his bearings, he saw who had assaulted him. Sitting on his torso was the plus-size body of Troy, who began shoving his open palms into Jeff's face, pushing it into the multicolored bricks. As he struggled in vain to free himself, the voice of Keith filled the air. "This is what you get, you asshole! Randy's back is broken because of you and your brother! He may never walk again!" Keith's heel thrust downward into Jeff's nose, releasing a pop similar to a chunk of wood being split open. Blood flooded into his sinuses and soaking the ground beneath him. The onslaught continued, each stomp disfiguring the young man's face until he was an unrecognizable mess of bone and gore. As Jeff's consciousness faded, the reality of Keith and Troy's actions hit them, causing them to exit through the bedroom window in a panic. The door remained locked, leaving Jeff's helpless condition unknown to the other partygoers. It was another 3 hours before he was finally found. Jeff's eyes fluttered open, a pain tightness wrapping around his head. He reached upwards to itch his jaw, only to feel the soft mesh of a bandage where the skin should have been. His chest heaved up and down as muffled screams reverberated throughout the hospital room. At once, a nurse burst into the room, rushing to Jeff's bedside, trying to calm the young man down. Shh, it's okay. How can I help you? Are you in pain? Jeff's breathing stifled, barely uttering a reply.
My face. What happened to my face? I can't feel anything!
The nurse held up her hands, motioning for him to be at ease. That's just the drugs wearing off. You'll have full feeling back soon, I promise. Jeff relaxed slightly as the nurse continued. Actually, now that you're awake, I can send the doctor in to cut off your bandages. Does that sound okay? The young man nodded hesitantly as the nurse sympathetically grinned and exited the room. As the door closed, Jeff realized something was wrong. He was alone in this room. No mother, no father, no friends. This filled him with a newfound sensation of isolation, as if an impenetrable wall was being erected between himself and the world around him. Before he could sink deeper into his own loathing, the doctor entered with a faux bravado of positivity.
Good evening, Jeffrey. It seems today is the big day. How are you feeling today?
Something about the way the doctor stated that put Jeff on edge.
What do you mean, today is the big day? How long have I been in the hospital?
The doctor continued preparing his instruments mechanically.
Today will be your 4th day with us and, if all goes well, the last.
This knowledge left Jeff visibly shaken even through his wrappings. The doctor handed him a small mirror as he slid the medical shears under the first layer of bandages.
I want you to have the first look at the reconstruction since it is your face and all.
That word reconstruction ricocheted a powerful primal dread inside the young man's mind. He held up the mirror in trembling fingers, his worst fears coming to light. As the first layer of wrapping was removed, a terrifying reality struck. Jeff couldn't breathe through his nose because it wasn't there. His mouth shape had been horribly disfigured, the chin being pushed back so it was in line with his temples, and his cheeks being set further in than normal, forcing his mouth into an uncontrolled smile. Lastly, and most disturbingly to Jeff, his eye sockets had to be completely rebuilt. The result was far too rounded of a shape to be mistaken for a natural occurrence. This was enough for him to drop the mirror and scream at the top of his lungs. The confused and startled doctor stopped the procedure immediately and saw the botched repair of his patient scrambling to cover for his mistake.
Don't worry, Jeff. It's still in the healing stage and it'll look better every day. Before you know it, you'll just see this new appearance as your normal face. Just give yourself some time to adjust, okay?
The doctor decided against taking off more of the bandaging, worried that revealing any more could push the young man even further over the edge.
Jeff turned his tear-stained face towards the now open door leading to the hallway. He exchanged glances with a girl half his age who immediately looked away. As she continued out of sight, he heard her speak a single line that confirmed his greatest worries. "Mommy, Mommy, I just saw a monster in there!" A secretary knocked lightly and poked her head through the doorway. "Good news, your father will be coming to pick you up as soon as his flight touches down in an hour. Apparently your mother had to do something with your brother and couldn't make it, but at least you get to go home." The doctor smiles at her and gives a shallow nod before turning his attention back to his despondent patient. "Well, that's great news, isn't it? Now, if you need anything before your dad gets here, just press that little button on the side of your bed, okay?" Jeff stared out the window, watching as the sun dropped under the horizon and the sky grew dark, black clouds and rain blotting out the silver glow of the moon. The young man pushed the call button a grand total of 4 times for the staff to reach out to his family, and every time was met with the same response. "Sorry, but they didn't answer. We left a voicemail saying to call us back as soon as they received the message." He didn't know how much time had passed, but by midnight, it was clear no one was coming for him that night. Jeff told himself it didn't bother him, a lie that persisted as he rose from his bed and climbed out of the window, a lie that grew stronger with every step he placed on the mile-long walk home, a lie that became true as he plunged a knife into his parents' chests. A video from a security camera the day of Randy's incident proved that it was an accident, and Lou was released from police custody immediately. He was smothered with hugs and kisses of relief from his mother, the two of them returning home to celebrate his liberation and the return of his father from Japan. Upon hearing Jeff's condition was stable enough to return home, Susan couldn't help but smile. The idea of all 3 of her boys together felt like an impossibility just a day ago, and now that it was happening, nothing could make her happier. Unfortunately, due to an unexpected thunderstorm, her husband wouldn't make it home until 2 hours later than expected. Paul decided that it was best to pick up his son first thing in the morning as the boy was probably asleep. He was surprised to see the lights off in the Martins' household, only realizing it was a power outage when every light switch failed to work. Exhausted, Paul set down his bags and stripped off his wet clothes, the jet lag causing him to pass out as soon as his head hit the pillow. The creak from the front door jolted Lou awake. His time in the detention hall made him jumpy to sudden noises. The boy stepped out of his room to set his mind at ease, all too eager to return to the comfiest rest he had had in over a week. He squinted through the darkness, ready to write off the sound as his mind playing tricks. That is, until the lightning illuminated the silhouette of a boy his size, soaking wet, standing in the doorway of his parents' bedroom. Lou's lips trembled, his voice barely audible. "Jeff? Is that you?" As the flash subsided, a voice ran with the thunder, carrying with it a phrase that would stick with Lou for the rest of his life. "Just go to sleep."
And that, folks, will conclude the rewrite of Jeff the Killer. If nothing else, I hope it at least entertained you for a little bit of your day. And whether you liked it or hated it, I'd love to hear from you, so feel free to comment on down below. If you haven't yet, please leave this video a like and subscribe so you don't miss out on any future uploads that come from the channel here. And once again, thank you so much for giving me part of your day today. It means the world. We will talk to you all soon, and I hope you all just have the most wonderful day. Deuces!